Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a pretty striking report from Millet Times. It paints a picture of a really severe crisis happening inside the Israeli military. Now, it makes some incredibly bold claims, so let's get right into the source material and break down what it actually says.
So the report really doesn't bury the lead. It kicks off with its most dramatic claim right away, a stark warning that it says comes from the very top of Israel's military command.
And here it is. This quote is the bombshell that the entire report is built around. The source alleges that Israel's army chief, Eyal Zamir, actually delivered this dire warning, that the armed forces are facing an imminent collapse if some emergency measures aren't taken, and taken fast.
Now, according to the Millet Times report, this isn't just one general's private fear. The report claims this sentiment is actually being echoed across the political landscape, from opposition leaders all the way to a former prime minister. That suggests a pretty widespread and deep-seated concern about the state of the army.
Okay, so what's this warning even based on? Well, the report alleges that the army chief presented a 10-point list of red flags to the war cabinet, basically detailing a deep internal crisis. Let's take a look at some of the key points from that supposed list. What's really interesting here is how all these points kind of create a domino effect. You see a critical shortage of personnel right at the top, which, of course, leads to an urgent need for new recruitment laws, and that explains why the reserve system is becoming unsustainable. So according to this report, it's not just one isolated problem. It's a systemic failure where the very foundation of the Army's manpower is cracking under all this pressure.
And to put a concrete number on that personnel shortage, the report cites Israel's former prime minister, Naftali Bennett. He supposedly claimed the army is currently short by 20,000 soldiers. I mean, that's a huge number, and if it's true, it would absolutely explain the urgency in those warnings. So you have all those internal issues brewing. But on top of that, the report argues the military is being squeezed from the outside. It paints a picture of an army stretched dangerously thin, trying to fight a war on 4 separate and active fronts, all at the same time.
First up is the air conflict with Iran. The report claims this has been a really costly fight for Israel, with its air force suffering pretty significant damage and losses.
Now let's move to the second front, Lebanon. Here, the report describes a really difficult ground war. Israeli forces are reportedly meeting fierce resistance from Hezbollah, which is leading to high casualties and reluctance to advance any deeper into the country.
The third front, according to the source, is a new and growing one right in the West Bank. The army chief is even quoted as calling this an escalating internal problem, which is being fueled by settler activity that's creating a whole new set of challenges for the military.
And finally, Gaza. The report makes a point to note that even with a supposed ceasefire in place, there's still a significant military presence required to conduct operations against Hamas. So what that means is there's no real relief on this front either.
The report then pivots. It shifts its focus from the battlefield to the home front, and it draws this really stark contrast between what it portrays as civilian life in Iran versus civilian life in Israel during this whole conflict.
And this slide really highlights the narrative the report is trying to build. On the left, it shows life in Iran as completely normal. People in parks, no panic buying. But then on the right, it paints a picture of Israel as a nation completely under duress. We're talking constant sirens, empty streets, and even a shuttered main airport. And to really drive this point home, the report includes this incredibly powerful quote, which it says comes from Israeli civilians speaking to news outlets. Is clearly intended to convey this deep sense of crisis and fear among the population. So, after laying out the internal fractures, the external pressures, and these different realities on the home front, what's the ultimate conclusion of the Millet Times report? What's the core argument they're trying to make here? Essentially, it all boils down to this. The report argues that it's a perfect storm. The main thesis is that an internal manpower crisis, combined with being overstretched on 4 fronts and a demoralized civilian population, are all coming together to push a powerful military right to its breaking point.
And this really leaves us with a fascinating question, doesn't it? The Millet Times report presents one very clear narrative, a narrative of collapse. It makes you wonder, in modern conflicts, how much of the battle is fought not with weapons, but with stories? How much does the perception of strength or weakness, of resilience or collapse, actually end up shaping the final outcome on the ground?